Welcome to the Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Saturday, we explore stories that are shaping the African continent. The US expelled South Africa's ambassador, Ebrahim Rasool, after Secretary of State Marco Rubio accused him of race baiting and hostility towards the US and President Trump. This rare diplomatic action followed Russo's comment on Trump's alleged supremacy mobilization, intensifying tensions between the two nations. How might this expulsion impact US-South Africa relations moving forward? Rwanda has severed diplomatic ties with Belgium, accusing it of undermining the countries amidst the conflict between the DRC and Rwanda's-backed M23 rebels. Belgium has pushed for EU sanctions against Rwanda over its alleged links to M23 rebels. How could this diplomatic rift affect Rwanda's international standing? In Nigeria, President Tinubu declared a state of emergency in the oil-rich Rivers State and suspended the governor, Sim Fubara, his deputy, and the entire State House of Assembly. The House of Assembly, dominated by loyalists of former governor and the current minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nelson Wike, were at loggerheads with Fubara. What are the possible legal and political ramifications of Tinubu's action? Confidence McHenry, security analyst at SBM Intelligence, join us for insights on these critical stories. Welcome, Confidence.
Hello, it's good to be back here.
Thank you. So let's begin with the US, South Africa, and Rwanda, Belgium story. What does these diplomatic expulsions and severe ties reveal about shift global power dynamic?
Um, so, one of the first things we have to understand is that the world is reaching an inflection point where multiple power centers are competing for attention, they also compete for resources. And many people, many actors, good actors, bad faith actors, everyone is trying to take advantage of it, trying to um, position themselves as alternatives to the US-led democratic system, the US-led international order rather, as well as the emerging multipolar movements in the West, in the East rather. So Rwanda is one of those few African countries who are taking advantage of the situation, and they're moving primarily away from their EU partners, who, number one, has been the one funding their budget and has been providing cover for the Kagame regime. And it's moving to play the geopolitical game. And um, its spats with Belgium over Rwanda's actions in Congo falls within that light. And well, all right. So I was saying earlier that Kigali is one of those capitals across the global south that are taking advantage of the growing multilateralism in international politics, and they are pivoting steadily away from their EU partners, whom they feel in regards to the DRC conflict are dictating terms that are too inimical to their sovereignty and their security policy in the region. So it is on the back of this that they have decided to sever ties with Belgium and expel the ambassador and rupture relations. Belgium has been one of the Belgium has listened to cries of many people who are being highly critical of Rwanda's support for the M23 rebels in the Congo, and has decided to move to sanction them along with EU partners, especially Germany. So this is basically the context of where the rupture of relations between Kigali and Brussels is coming from.
So like moving to the South African story, how significant is the US decision to expel South African ambassador, and what precedents does it set going forward?
Right. So the U.S. and the expulsion of the South African ambassador to the U.S. is profound. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember, readily recall an ambassador being expelled from the US in recent memory. And one of the reasons why this is profound is that it marks a new low in South Africa's relations with the US. It has been deteriorating badly, and for a couple of years, and then it took an accelerating turn since 2022 when South Africa refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine and refused to condemn it, refused to join the sanctions, and then went right ahead to hold joint naval drills between China, Iran, and Russia. And no, China and Russia only, minus Iran. And then sometime along the line in, I think, 2023, the U.S. ambassador to South Africa was forced to publicly apologize for accusing South Africa of approving arms shipments to Russia, and so many other so many other waters have gone under the bridge. And but most spectacularly, among every other thing that has been happening since the Trump administration got back into the White House was the sanctions against South Africa by the US, which many people have pointed to Elon Musk, Trump's billionaire advisor, as being behind it. So his expulsion, there's the ambassador's expulsion is profound. It's significant in the sense that this is basically the Trump administration telling the world, number one, that America is no longer the America I used to know. The whole rules-based international order, where America will pretend that it's respecting rules-based international order and then take quote unquote shit from everybody, is gone, and so you have to put up with the program or you get out. So South Africa's the expression of the ambassador basically is number two, a warning to other countries not to mess with the US. That whatever you do, you get the repercussions. The ambassador criticized the Trump administration, according to Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, for being a white supremacist, being racist, and then Marco Rubio called him a race baiter and the likes. So, for the context behind the ambassador's comment, it was more of him trying to take note of the demographic change that's happening in the U.S. And then the Trump administration called him a hater of the Trump administration, a hater of America, and a race baiter. So, I think secondly, the significance of this is that things that used to be quite a norm in international politics, such as a smaller country, a smaller insignificant quote unquote country in the world taking up a bigger country to the courts, to the world court, say the ICJ or the International Criminal Court, is a change that we're not no longer going to be seeing. The United States used to see this as an annoyance, to the point that they used to sanction members of the International Criminal Court for wanting to prosecute American soldiers for war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq. But the Trump administration is taking it a notch higher. So they're not just going to be seeing it as just an annoyance, they're going to be punishing it. So unfortunately, South Africa is the victim right now. And I think it stems largely from its decision to take Israel, its staunchest ally, to the ICJ or the ICC rather, in prosecution of its war against Hamas in Gaza. So this is some of the important context you should know, and the significant fallout of this is that the Trump administration is not yet to play, and we are going to be likely be seeing a lot more of this going forward, especially if countries do not read the room and decide to take an antagonistic position against the US as long as Trump is in office.
So how do you think that the South African government is going to respond to this as well? So we've seen that the ambassador has been told to move out of the US. So what do you think would be the response that South Africa can have for it to be able to mend this relationship with the US?
So South Africa is not looking to in a hurry to repair its relationships with the US. It's of BRICS. It's a founding member of BRICS. It has more. Its foreign policy is more aligned with Russia than it is more aligned with the US. And so the Americans are in Washington foreign policy circles to have this coming. They've been long suffering rather. They've given a lot of aid a lot of support for South Africa without getting the same law. So South Africa getting the short end of the stick means they had it coming, and South Africa is not really looking to repair its relations to the US because it doesn't really think, number one, that anything good is going to come out of it. It's not really in the mood to play nice with the White House, the current White House, and then secondly, there is this artisanal should I say culture among South African political elites where the government policy, standard policy, and back to data governance. It is very, if you look at South African political elites across the aisle, it could be Democratic Alliance, it could be from the ruling ANC that has been ruling the country since 1994. It could even be from the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, which was founded by Julius Malema, who used to be in the ANC. They are very deeply ideologically driven. Some are far left, some are center, some are in the hard right. So the Democratic Alliance is mostly a right-wing party. There tries to be a right of center party. So many of them are mostly driven by ideological concerns. And the ambassador, which is Ebrahim Rasool, is one of those people who tends to let their ideologies speak rather than policy or rather than naked pragmatism. They don't really know, they don't really understand the importance of keeping their ideologies in check. And it's beginning to affect them. It has affected them a lot in the development of their country, in terms of economics, in economic relations, in terms of the whole farming policy that the Trump White House did not like. And I do think that if they learn the lessons from this, that when you come on the world stage, that you have to keep your ideologies in check. You're going to make more progress. You're going to win more friends than at being pragmatic than being ideological driven. It's going to help your country. I think if they realize this in the future, maybe they might get on the way to a recess with the US. But for now, I don't think they are going to see it. I mean, I think from the tone, they are a lot more measured in their tone now. Maybe they are starting to realize it, but how they are going to act in terms of how they're going to be pursuing a reset in the relations with the US and whoever they send back to the White House, back to Washington is going to really heavily tell if they've learned lessons going forward.
Yeah, interesting. Looking forward to seeing the reaction of South Africa as well and the next steps that would be taken. So back to the Rwanda story. How do you think this move signals Rwanda's broader foreign policy strategy in relation to other Western nations? So they've decided to cut their ties with Belgium. Do you think that moving forward, Rwanda is also going to make certain moves to other foreign nations as well to cut ties?
So Rwanda's position is mostly fixated on what Washington and Beijing to their adventures in the DRC. As of the time of speaking, M23 rebels have pushed deeply into southern DRC, and they are taking up as much territory as they can before they are forced to give them back. So they are trying to strengthen their positions ahead of a possible negotiation. In light of that, of course, it's an open secret now that Rwanda is backing them. Paul Kagame has dilly-dallied and he has finally come out to acknowledge that there are Rwandan forces on the ground. Most of what Kagame is doing, and Rwanda generally, is trying to be the middle ground between East and West. So there is this political which the Congo has an abundance of, things like lithium, cobalt, basically generally rare earths that are used in making chips, microchips, computers, electric vehicles, and the likes. China is the United States is in the need of this. And one of the reasons why the US hasn't, under Trump, hasn't really claimed Rwanda, given it, despite the out to provide them more. It's naked geopolitics, naked interest playing out here. Kagame understands the game and he knows that the EU cannot afford him much. Right nowadays, the EU is mostly looking to shore up its own defense interests domestically, shore up his economic, tries to divorce itself from Europe, giving America's yes, he tries to divorce itself from the US, giving the Trump administration's emphasis on America first. So Kagame has looked at the game and then that he has much better to gain by closing up to the US and China than playing together with the EU. So and you could see this play out also. I think the Congolese understand what Kagame is trying to do. So I think it was as recently as a month ago that President of the DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, was appealing publicly to the US that they don't have to buy rare earths from Rwanda. They can get it for a better value. They can get it at a cheaper value if they get it, if it's sourced directly from the DRC. And they are also trying to warm up to the idea of playing both superpowers on both sides because there are lots of Chinese guys on the ground. And they also want Chinese protection in their fight against the RC, but given Chinese foreign policy, they are not really that keen on engaging in somebody else's warfare. So the US is the one that has all of the diplomatic heft, and both capitals, Kinshasa as well as Kigali, to get whatever they can get. So to answer your question directly, Kagame and Rwanda they don't really care about what the EU says. I think they have cast their lots based on what they could get from either Beijing or Washington.
I mean, let's move on to our final story where this week we saw the political crisis and tension in River State escalate. And we saw the intervention of the federal government when the president gave a 6 month suspension and declared a state of emergency, suspending both the governor, deputy governor, state house assembly. Now, what do you think about the federal government's intervention, especially the 6 months state of emergency and suspension, and what impact is it going to have on governance?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, to understand your question, you were trying to find out what would happen as in what my take on the
Just kind of basically what impact it would have.
pipeline has been locked. Yeah, so a little bit of the context, the current governor has been locked in this political battle of control over the state's political machinery and resources with his mentor and immediate ex-governor Ian Miki, who is the current minister of the Federal Capital Territory. And it has spilled off into the streets because much of the fight is not necessarily only with the political machinery of the PDP, but also for the political machinery, which in turn controls revenue from the creeks, as well as illegal refineries and several other things that are associated with the patronage networks that keep up the state's political machinery up and running. And there's been this running battle that has landed in the Supreme Court, the expulsion of the defection of state assemblymen, the associate court judgments that have urged them that have declared their seats vacant, and several other things have happened. And until the Trans Niger pipeline was blown up in River State, and the federal government used that as cause to on whether it is legal or not. I don't, from my standpoint, from everything I've seen so far, I don't think it was done legally because according to Section 305, I think, which the president quotes, you have to pass this as an instrument, as a gazette to the National Assembly. The National Assembly has to vote to instead of the voting manually, because I think from media reports I'm hearing that the president was threatened with a lot of abstentions. So he didn't want to risk it. So he got client members, principal officers of the National Assembly to use voice votes. It's in terms of impact as to how this thing is going to impact the state. River State hasn't really been governed well ever since this crisis erupted, which was about 7 months into the sitting governor's term. The kind of stability that you need for investments to come in on the ground. The role of the sole administrator, which has been appointed between Tuesday and today, will be to oversee the affairs under democratic. The person will not be operating with the kind of democratic legitimacy that an elected government, however election they would get. So the kind of question we're now going to be having is, would we see, should I say, a continuum of the status quo but a different person, or we're going to a different person that would directly from the FCC. Given everything, the situation that's pointed on the ground, we are likely going to be seeing the FCC controlling, that's Abuja controlling rivers, and given that Tinubu has chosen his side, what side is going to support it, this is just going to be another thing for years of the by other means.
So how do you think that Governor Fubara is going to react? Do you think that he's going to go to the court to challenge it and get back his seat? Or do you think he's just going to accept it and wait for the 6 months to elapse? Interestingly, it would also be, to know what the pulse of the people are, basically. So how do you think the people of River State are receiving this news? Do you think they are satisfied with the intervention of the federal government? And do you also think that they will join and try to also get back Governor Farah? I think lastly, do you think that the suspension will be lifted before 6 months?
Okay, so to begin with, on as regards to people state, in the past few weeks, the conflict has evolved into an ethnic one. River State is divided geographically into two. The upland people, who are Ikweres, Eche, and every other Igbo group, and then the lower parts, which is the river area, are mostly inhabited by the Ijos, as well as their cousins, the Igbo and the likes. So it has become an ethnic war where Nyesom Bike, who is an Ikwere man, is fighting Simnalayi Fubara, who is an Ijo man from Boni. So right now, the people who are most happy about the state of emergency thing are mostly supporters of Nyesom Bike. Um, However, anyone who is on the streets in Port Harcourt, or who is on the streets, who is neutral at best or aligned with the state government, or similar like Fubara, is happy with the state of emergency. It's not something they wanted. Many of them have actually kicked against it. And so the question is, on what Fubara would do. For now, mostly he's telling everybody to calm down. He seems to have accepted it on the surface. He seems to have accepted he's not really making as much noise as one will come to expect. I think if he's making as much noise, the noise is coming mostly from us. Ex-governors have been at the forefront of condemning Tinubu's move. And so it remains to be seen what he wants to do. Logically, it will be important for him to take this to the courts. And one of the reasons why he will not really be that keen to do it, because there's this perception rather, that the judiciary has been heavily compromised by Nyesom Wiki, and so it's almost futile taking it to the courts to get an adjudication. And so it's most likely option will have to be to get perhaps to try the court option. If it doesn't work, try to look at the political settlement between him and Tinubu, or him and his predecessor. So it remains to be seen what kind of line he will take. But the important thing is that I think what we're going to be seeing from now to the end of the crisis is that we're going to be seeing a lot more involvement of pan-Ijaw groups, and maybe the IYC, the Pan Niger Delta Forum, and several other ones are going to be doing a lot of lobbying if to get him back into office. So whether the state of emergency will be lifted before the 6 months, I don't really know. I think it's something to watch out as it unfolds.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's really interesting times right now that we are in, and it will be really interesting to see how this plays out in the coming days or months as well. That's all for today. Thank you
Mm.
very much, Confident Mark Henry, for bringing such thoughtful perspectives to the conversation. To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. If you haven't already, sure to subscribe, like, share, and let us know your thoughts in the comment section. For further insights into our work, visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for tuning into the week ahead. Join us next Saturday for more updates shaping the African continent.